Hello, Garland Nixon here with Laith Marouf. There's a lot of things going on that we need to talk about in Syria, Yemen missile strikes, the so-called ceasefire in Lebanon. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here with Laith Marouf. Sorry about that. I am, as we speak, trying to still working and get things together. I'm here digging out from in Maryland, we get like it's 6 or 7 inches of snow, and people think that it's a snowmageddon. But at any rate, Laith Marouf, we got plenty to talk about. Let's start here. I understand your YouTube channel that there was the entire channel was a copyright violation of.
Yes, it was. We received yesterday an email from YouTube saying that our whole channel is deleted because it's the whole channel is in violation of the community standards. So there was no strikes and or specific videos that they noted. So after a year and a half of producing all this content from the field in Lebanon and Palestine and Jordan, over 500,000 views, 15,000 followers, all gone in a blink of an eye. We appealed, and it just took them all about 10 minutes to reject our appeal. So clearly an employee has been given the order to take this decision and not waste time. So we're right now still on Rumble. We're on Telegram. People can find all our links on our website, freepalestine.video. Obviously, we're going to have a big chunk of our viewers that can't access Rumble in some countries in Europe, or Telegram also in some countries that will have an issue finding our videos. We're still also posting everything on X until now. It seems like we're fine on that platform. Let's see how that lasts. So I hope our viewers can help us donate, go to the website and share our content.
FreePalestine.video is their website. You can find links to all of their social media accounts there. Please follow them on all their social media accounts. Additionally, they do have a donate button, so you can click on donate there, and you can become a monthly subscriber, if that's the right term, and you can donate monthly. That's always a good thing to do. If you got a choice between donating a little more or donating a little less and doing monthly is great. In the business world, we call it RMR, recurring monthly revenue. And to be quite frank, if you'd rather have a $20 donation or a $5 monthly, the $5 monthly is going to be much more helpful, because it's not going to really hurt the person who's given the $5 as much as giving $20. And of course, in the long run, it adds up to be more, and you can really help. So freepalestine.video, whatever you can give is appreciated. And if you could become a monthly subscriber, that would be fantastic. We know, I've been saying lately that, we've got a new administration coming in, but the old administration sanctioned everything in the name of Russia. And I would suspect the new administration will sanction everything in the name of Zionism. So as I've said about fascism these days, do you want strawberry or butter pecan? You're going to get various various flavors of fascism. It will be a little bit different here and there, but if the Zionism, how about this, in the butter pecan, the Zionism is the nuts parts. Whatever kind of ice cream you're getting nuts. You're going to get nuts, that's for sure. So at any rate, enough about.
Well, pecan pie is one of the best. My wife is from Louisiana.
Yeah.
So I don't want pecan pie to be associated with Zionism ever.
That's funny. My grandmother was Creole from Louisiana, so I'm very familiar with the Louisiana culture and the food. Also, pecan pie, good stuff. Okay, let us continue. let's start with here. We've got a number of things we got to get over, but the Zionists, and when I say the Zionist, I mean the collective Zionist to me, which includes, I mean, we've got a Zionist empire. So to me, that includes the European puppets, that includes the US, that includes, you know, the everybody involved in the Zionist empire. One can almost include Turkey right now. But at any rate, we won't go there just now. But they have been threatening Yemen lately. They've been bombing Yemen for the last 10 or 15 years. Well, many, the Brits, I mean, you can go way back, but but here's the point. It seems to me that Yemen has been demonstrating technological prowess, shall we say. They've been able to, you know, I know this is humiliating and embarrassing for the US and its Western technology, but it seems to me that Yemen can one missile. And they could, it seems to me that they could tell the, you know, contact Netanyahu and say, we're going to hit you at this time with this kind of missile at this spot. And there's still nothing they could do about it. That's the way it's starting to look right now. That's almost what they're doing, Laith.
Yes, yes. And today the Yemeni armed forces announced that they are instituting a tit for tat kind of policy, an attack on electricity grid or electricity plant in Yemen by the Zionists or the Americans will entail an attack on an electricity plant in the Zionist colony. Similarly, an attack on ports will lead to that, airports similar to that. And we're already seeing that in action. I mean, they just today kind of confirmed that by their statement, the Yemenis. So over the last 3 days, Yemen, you know, attacked twice the electricity plants in Haifa, south of Haifa, and near Tel Aviv, and also attacked the Ben Gurion airport. And we also saw twice in the last 3 days the Yemenis attacking American aircraft carrier group in the Red Sea, and the group keeps on retreating more and more north towards the Sinai Canal because the missiles and drones still are hitting them. So Yemen is achieving tremendous things under the conditions that it's under. And although we keep on hearing these threats by the Zionists and the whole Zionist empire that they will go into full war against Yemen, one wonders what can they do. I mean, they were in a full-out war under other names for more than a decade in Yemen. The Saudis and Emiratis were the face of that war, but it was mainly Western pilots and Western jets that were bombarding the hell out of Yemen. They also, during that war, brought in all the mercenaries they can from Sudan, from Somalia, from Al-Qaeda, from the Muslim Brotherhood, even former Russian and Ukrainian soldiers were all involved on the ground in that war and were unable to go up the mountains to defeat Ansarullah and capture Sana'a. And we saw the triggering of the Muslim Brotherhood just over last week when they attempted to attack Ta'az, and the Ansarullah were ready for them. The Yemeni National Army defeated the invading Muslim Brotherhood and slaughtered them. And now we see the Muslim Brotherhood finally in Yemen coming out publicly in statements calling on the US and Israel to help them defeat Ansarullah so they can safeguard Israel, openly saying this. So now we're kind of in a stage where the tools of the empire inside Yemen are disgracing themselves, are weakening themselves under the orders of the West to make such statements. And this is not going to bode well for them because even the Sunni population in Yemen, which is just around 10% of the population, is very proud, is anti-Zionist, and the Emiratis and Saudis activating the Muslim Brotherhood with these statements is only actually going to weaken their hold. So we'll see what happens in the next a few days or weeks if the empire decides to attack Yemen before Trump comes in, or are they going to wait till after Trump comes in? That's the only question that's left to us. We don't have an answer for.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, I think they're hesitant to some extent, because I think one of the things they understand is there are a lot of countries that will pull their punches. Yemen won't pull their punches. That whatever they do, if Yemen says, if you strike this, we will strike that, they will do it. I know that Yemen has, Ansar Allah has threatened to hit U.S. bases. They have warned Gulf countries that if they allow U.S. to and Israel to use their airspaces to attack them, they can potentially attack their energy assets, their oil assets, etc. So, of all the countries in the region, they're really playing dangerously with Yemen, because I think they understand that a lot of countries may threaten to put the lights out in Israel and strike all of their their electrical plants, but Yemen will surely do it if they go all out against Yemen. I think it's interesting that we keep hearing a lot about attacks on U.S. military naval assets, but we never hear much about it. It appears to me, to be quite frank, that when it comes to the naval engagement, the U.S. has I mean, quite frankly, that they've lost a naval engagement with a country that doesn't have a navy.
Oh yes, this is historical moments in the annals of naval warfare. As you pointed out aptly, Yemen doesn't have a navy, doesn't have destroyers or aircraft carriers, but has managed to defeat the most powerful naval force in the world. Nobody comes anywhere close to the amount of naval assets that the U.S. has on this planet. And this is important because it shows now that we live in a new world where drones, whether they're surface drones or air drones, and these hypersonic missiles can be produced cheaply by a lesser power and be able to assert sovereignty if it chooses to on its territory in the face of huge odds against the empire. And I think many are now learning lessons from this, especially probably China, which is more advanced in these technologies than Yemen could be. Look at the air shows that the Chinese conducted during New Year's. I mean, there was whole dragons flying, and in the skyline of their cities that are coordinated drones, light shows. So imagine if these drones were actually armed drones, how they could be invading a battle zone, and what will be able to take such a wave of drones? Nothing. So the future is that the U.S. is slow on the catch up on this field, but once we move into this reality of drone warfare, the battlefield is going to be more balanced. Okay, because the effects of 10 drones violating, let's say, an airspace, as happened with the hysteria that happened in New Jersey and New York, okay, is huge. You don't have to have 1,000 drones flying in at the same time to destabilize a country or bring it into chaos. You just need a few hundred of them. And as we see, the most vicious part of the Zionist empire, the colony itself, has been militarily defeated on the ground by the resistance in Gaza, in the air by Hezbollah and Ansarullah, much weaker, fighters, let's say, in terms of or capabilities. The empire had to bring in all its assets to defend the Zionist colony, and Yemen now is filling the gap that the other components of the axis of resistance have left in the last few months.
One of the things that also I like to compare the conflicts in Ukraine and in the Middle East, because I think they're in a way are the exact same conflict, and that is a dying empire in desperation attacking any way it can. And one of the things, the comparisons, I'll throw it at you, Laith, and see what you think. Initially, the Ukrainians had an army. The Russians smashed that to pieces, and the U.S. had to rebuild that. And it's and it has all of France and all these others in there. And they went in and the Russians smashed one army, and they have to reconstitute that and come up with a new army, and then that gets defeated. When the initial October 7th attack happened, in my opinion, that was a devastating blow against the Israeli army, right? And they went to battle, and in my opinion, their first army got whatever they had of the Israeli army was thoroughly defeated. And then we saw the U.S. come in, and all of NATO, their ships were, if you remember, when Iran was firing, there were ships from all over NATO there protecting it. So the Israeli military, as it was constituted, was thoroughly defeated, just like the proxy army in Ukraine was thoroughly defeated. And they had to rebuild that with Western assets. And it seems to me the same thing, in my opinion, is doomed to happen. They create a military, the Russians defeat it, they reconstitute it. The Russians defeat it, they reconstitute it. Because they've lost every war. Vietnam, every war we go to, they may stick around for a while, but eventually they get run out, right? And it seems to me the same dynamic here. Do they get some wins now and then? Yes, they do. But every army they put forward gets defeated, and they have to reconstitute it. What are your thoughts on that, Leith?
Yeah, you're right. Look at this. Now probably they are on their third wave of a recruitment of officers and soldiers, the Israelis, because the first wave was the old guard that got slaughtered, all those generals, and captured in October 7th. And then they had to bring in replacement generals. And then, as we saw over the last 15 months, tens of officers, if not hundreds of officers in the Israeli military were killed in Gaza and or on the border of Lebanon. And now we're on the third grade. And just like how the Ukrainians had to keep on bringing down the age of enlistment in the military in order to keep on the military alive, is happening also in the Zionist colony. But the Zionist colony has always recruited, by the way, 17-year-olds into the Israeli military. It's one of only two countries in the world that recruits 17-year-olds, anybody that's younger than 18, into the military. And so we see that the expertise is gone. The U.S. is having to directly be involved in the planning and the implementation of any military action on the ground. And above and beyond that, there's chaos happening. For instance, I read today there was an Israeli officer inside Gaza that recruited his cousins that are not in the military, that are actually mafia members inside Israel, to come into the areas that he's in charge of in Gaza to conduct looting and mass murder, without the military being directly involved in it. So him and his cousins right now are enriching themselves out of the loot from Palestinian homes in Gaza that under his control. And so this is an indication of the deterioration of the military now into gangs and gangsterism. And that doesn't happen if there's a real military, that the command structures are active and working. And this is one example. And obviously all those videos of the rapes and killings that the Israeli soldiers are filming themselves and putting them on TikTok and so on, although every day almost orders are being repeated over and over by the Israeli military to their soldiers, please don't film yourself committing these crimes, do them in the dark, they're not listening. So, and those who are responding to the call to service are also their kind of mental state and what kind of person they are is becoming more and more fascist. There's something like 30% desertion right now within the regular soldiers corps, and upwards of 20% desertion in the calls for reservists in the officer corps. So, the ones that are going are the ones that are convinced 100% of their supremacy and are viciously ready for genocide and want to conduct these massacres. So that is many examples that I gave you right now of how the Israeli military has collapsed and is right now just a militia that is full of crazies. And that is not a way that you can win a war with such a force.
Yeah, I certainly agree. When I see these things, to me, it's a sign of weakness. It's a sign of the deterioration, not just of the media, of their entire, of the military, but of their society. Let me ask you this. Have you, and I think I was reading that Netanyahu had prostate cancer surgery or something like that. I think the other thing is this: if something happens to Netanyahu and he's unable to be the face of the empire, because to me Americans think he's making decisions. He isn't in public, just like Zelensky. These people are tools, political and military tools for imperialism. My point is this: in the same way, to me, that the eventuality of Ukraine's collapse and internal civil war and factional fighting is inevitable. In the event that Netanyahu, who, and I've used this word loosely, is the only thing holding Israel together. If something happens to this guy, internally, they won't be able to do anything. They will just fight. Things will go, in my opinion. I don't think the colony can remain stable. Right.
Yeah. Look, look at just the cabinet and the coalition that Netanyahu is keeping together. These are individuals that are all at odds, and every day they're calling each other names. Every day they're inciting their bases against the other. And so, one thing to be said about Netanyahu is that he's a cunning sneak. He has served the longest as prime minister in the history of this colony, and has survived and has revived his political career, I think 4 times already, from being outside the politics and coming back. So he's definitely a factor that once he's gone, there's no replacement for in the Zionist colony, and this coalition will fall apart immediately. Now, having said that, you are right. The final chapters of both Ukraine and Israel have been already written, and there is no coming back, specifically for the Zionist colony, from what the hole that it dug itself in. There's no way that it can be accepted again within the human family. There's court cases against Israeli soldiers in every continent right now, in Thailand, in Vietnam, in Germany, in France, in Argentina, in Brazil, and it's still just the beginning in South Africa. And so, at some point, the isolation will be so severe from civilization and humanity for the Israeli colony that it cannot maintain itself, even with all the direct, non-stop support by the empire as a whole. And I think looking at how the situation is affecting the populations inside imperial domains, how the targeting of civilians, citizens in France, in Germany, in Canada, in the US, and in the UK that are critical of the Zionist colony, and or the attacks on the educational systems, the attacks on the media, all of that is happening. This is destabilizing the core, components of the empire internally. And the Zionists keep on getting more and more fascist within those components, and are pushing for the rise of the Nazis ultimately. You look at what's happening in the UK right now with the Zionist media pushing for what's his name, Farage, and the National Front basically to become the new government. Look at what's happening in Canada with Trudeau just stepping down right now, and the Zionists pushing for Poilievre, the conservatives that is really fascist out there, to become the new prime minister. That is going to instigate problems inside those countries and more repression of their own citizens. And what we up until now have been thinking will never happen, let's say a revolt in those countries, may become a possibility once the fascism gets severe in the West. And I don't know what's going to happen in the US after Trump comes in, and if he goes to war with Iran, all of these things. This is not going to also, this is only going to bring the destability in the United States. And those are all indicators of collapse.
Yeah, I was just putting up a couple of things, McDonald's, Starbucks, etc. Right? Inside Starbucks, very, very long, very bad 2024. Traffic decline, labor strike. Now they're hurting. But what's interesting is they won't. Both McDonald's and Starbucks are taking a beating, but they won't talk about the fact that it has to do with boycotts around the world. That I think one of the interesting things that happened here is that maybe intuitively, maybe accidentally. I live in a country where people say, "Oh, the government." They talk about the government and the corporations. The corporations own the government and run the government, right? We don't have a government. We got a corporate oligarchy, right? But some kind of way, I think there's people figuring it out. It does no good to yell at Joe Biden. Joe Biden wouldn't know you're yelling at him. He doesn't, he soils himself every day in the Rose Garden, for God's sake, right? But you can hit their masters. You can hit the real power. And one of the things that's happened here, and I think it will be a long-lasting effect, is people have understood, well, if you got a corporate oligarchy and you want to punch somebody, you got to punch the corporations. And now McDonald's, they're in a horrible decline. You read everywhere, oh, people aren't going to McDonald's. Is it really because of the food? Their food isn't worse than Burger King. It's all the same crap, right? Starbucks, they've been going, the yuppies been loving Starbucks, walking around paying triple what they should for a cup of coffee because it has Starbucks. But now that mysteriously, coincidentally, when the boycott started against particularly, I would say if you had to pick any two countries that are at the forefront of that, it would be Starbucks and McDonald's, and they are going down hard. I think this is an interesting, and to me, positive development, that either people are learning that the real power is the corporations, either they're learning it or they accidentally stumbled upon it. Either way, it has the same effect. Your thoughts?
Oh yeah. And look, something that is very interesting also and revealing from this. There was this huge, long debate always for years about is class and or race a bigger determiner in imperialism, right? And while for a long time, those who said it's capitalism and doesn't have anything to do with race were winning this debate. Well, today, look at this: Starbucks and McDonald's are willing to sacrifice all the Arabic and Muslim market, plus the market of all the conscientious people all around the world, but to keep the market of the Zionist colony. I mean, this is the antithema of capitalism. This is capitalists hurting themselves for what? For their racism, okay? So what is clear is that the not the capitalist class in the West are Zionist first and foremost. That doesn't mean they're Jewish, just so nobody can claim that
Right,
we're saying the
absolutely.
Jews control the world. No, but the elite in the West, no matter what their religiosity or not, are Zionists. They support the Zionist colony. They see it as the epitome of Western civilization, and as Netanyahu said it in the Congress, they actually believe what he said in the Congress. And therefore, they're willing to sacrifice all their financial gains just to keep it, McDonald's and Starbucks included. And so clearly, capitalism is a determiner in imperialism, but supremacy comes before it. And you need a drive to have an empire. You need to believe in yourself that you have the manifest destiny, that you are the chosen people, that you are so on, to drive you into imperialism. It's not just money that drives somebody to that. And actually, the more rich you are, the more you believe that you are chosen. Like the Musks, like the Bill Gates, like the Soros, they actually believe that they are chosen by God to lead humanity into whatever direction they feel like driving it. Not only that, they have the money to do that. So it's important for all of us to learn from these things and understand how capital and racial superiority work together, that they're not separate. This is not to say that our brothers and sisters that are from European descent, that are working class, are not also being manipulated and oppressed. That is actually part of why we're in this problem, that our brothers and sisters in the working class that from European backgrounds don't have enough health in their body to rebel against their overlords themselves also. They're worked to death, they're sick to death, they're poisoned to death as working class European and Americans and so forth, and cannot rebel. But let's hope they're all these pressures on them as a population would drive them to look into the truth and finding ways to work with the rest of humanity to get rid of imperialism and Zionism.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in this, that their true belief, the foundation of what they're trying to accomplish is to completely dominate the planet. And what they fear is that if they don't dominate the planet, they'll lose everything. This horrible fear. Oh my gosh. And because the whole Zionist project is in the Middle East where all the oil is, their biggest fear is not being able to dominate the region that has oil, which is the lifeblood currently of industry. That could change. And that this is all about, to me, I've always said this, the US empire is using Jewish people as human shields for imperialism. If you look at their history, the history in the United States is of anti-Semitism. But what's the term I want to use? It was ubiquitous throughout the U.S. It was like racist. It was an apartheid state. And when there was apartheid state against Black people, they weren't all that thrilled about Jewish people, although they were allowed to make money and things like that. For instance, a lot of the colleges, the big colleges, 10% maximum as far as Jewish people, no more. For many, many years. Europeans, thousands of years of pogroms of slaughtering Jews. The Jewish people could live amongst the Muslims in peace, but they couldn't live in Europe in peace. They'd be slaughtered. And eventually the crescendo of all that anti-Semitism, it wasn't something that was out of the blue that nobody thought would happen. The crescendo of that was the Holocaust. That was the eventuality of 1,000 years. And so now, to me, we have the barbarity of the ruling elite. They're always looking for somebody to stick out front. And so you can say it's not them, it's us. They brainwashed, unfortunately, using Zionism, a lot of the Jewish people brainwashed them into kind of like the Ukrainians, into voluntarily being cannon fodder for the US empire. The Ukrainians, how's it working out for them? How's this whole thing working out for the Ukrainians? They're cannon fodder. Look at the the Middle East and look at Jewish people. If they're in living in Tehran, they're safe. They're beloved by their neighbors. They can go and do anything they want. In Tehran, where it's supposed to be the bad place, they have like a very large Jewish population who are perfectly happy. Nobody's messing with them. But if they live in the Zionist entity, the Zionist colony, they're screwed. They're ducking from missiles every day. Which one is safer for Jewish people? Jewish people, in my opinion, are being used by the same people who slaughtered them for the last 1,000 years and then scapegoated. And when this all goes bad and goes to hell, the U.S. empire will say, well, it was the Jewish people that did it. If we hadn't listened to them, we wouldn't be here. Guaranteed they will be scapegoated in the end. Like right now, they're scapegoating Zelensky and the Ukrainians. Well, if only they'd have done what we told. Well, you know what they're going to say? They stole all the money and the weapons. While if they'd have just used what we gave them to fight the Russians, they'd have surely won. They will scapegoat the very people that they're using for cannon fodder when this thing is over.
Like, oh yeah, and we're already seeing this happening. Like, look, 20 somewhat years, I'm active on this issue politically and on the media. And for the first time, you have people freely and in mass in the West, just take a look at on X, for instance, talking about things like the protocols of the Elders of Zion, and talking about Jews, controlling this and that, and they're controlling the American government, and look at how many Jews in the American government and this and that. So I've never seen this in my 20 years career before. And we were for decades working against these things, and those who spoke in these ways were hidden. Now it's promoted on X. And I think the Zionists are also happy with this, by the way. The Zionists want two things. One, because they want the fascists to come into power in Western societies, that plays two things. One is oppresses all the Arab and Muslim minorities and all those who support Palestinian liberation. The other, it scares away the Jews from those countries to the Zionist colony. So it plays perfectly in the hands of what the Zionists want. And so to see how the same censors on these social media platforms are allowing the festering of these ideas while they are silencing anybody that actually criticizes the genocide in Gaza and or speaks in terms that are very thought out and detailed, like me and you having this discussion. We're critical of the Zionist colony, and we're critical of Zionism and the empire, but we're caring for the lives of Jewish beings and followers of the Jewish religion and so on. This is the nuanced way to discuss things. We are the ones that are suppressed in the social media. Well, look, the situation is untenable. It cannot stay like this for long. A blowout is going to happen, and there will be victims to this. And those who want to avert such a situation must start working on it immediately.
I agree. Yes. The discussion, and because as I've said to many people, my brother who passed away, my brother was Jewish. He was in the military, converted to Judaism, and he would fit right in with these talks because he had the perspective of a person who was the Black person and lived in the U.S. and who became a Jewish person. And he was a soldier, and he saw all of these things, and he was very angry at the U.S. Very angry, and he felt as though they're going to make us the scapegoats. He used to talk about it. He said they're going to make us the scapegoats. That ultimately, this is one of the things my brother said. You look at the U.S., say the Biden administration, and it's loaded with Jewish people, right? So it's going to be one of the worst administrations ever. It's going to go to hell. You know who you think they're going to blame Joe Biden? You think they're going to blame the white guys in there? No, they're not. they're going to blame all of the Jewish. They're going to pretend like there was the ones that made all of the decisions, and it was all about for Judaism and all this kind of stuff. They're going to blame them, and they're going to scapegoat them. The Zionists, like Joe Biden and Trump, they ain't Jewish Zionists. And see that we talk about when we talk about the Zionists, there are all of these people that are Zionists that are not Jewish. They ain't going to take the heat. They're going to step aside. Looks like this guy over there is the problem, and we'll be the first ones to join to persecute him. And people like us, we're the ones, because we're trying to stop war, who are called anti-Semites and all that kind of stuff, because we're opposed to Zionism and because we're opposed to war, are the very ones who'll say, wait a minute, we are not in favor of, these are of hurting people who, of scapegoating people. The same ones that are attacked will be the ones even then that say, hey, we're opposed to this. Let's not scapegoat all these Jewish people. This is violence against innocent people. So the people that they're trying to pin as the bad guys will be the ones who will be standing up for them in the same way that we're standing up for innocent people now, oddly enough.
Before we go back to serious stuff, probably about Syria and Iraq and so on, I'm gonna tell a story here that maybe will lighten up a little bit the mood. 22 years ago, in my young days, I was in university, active, and at the time I took a class, Intro to Islam, just to get good grades, to raise my GPA, because of all the activism was taking away from my points. And I wouldn't go to class, and I would just come before the exam and take notes from one of the other students. And so this young lady was sitting beside me, and I asked her for her notes, and she came and met me at the bar in the University Concordia. I didn't know this, but she turned out to be Jewish, Montrealer, Jewish Canadian. And so she gave me the papers. Second exam I go to take, again, I meet her at the bar. And so she comes and sits down and starts crying. And I'm like, what is happening here? Are you okay? So she tells me a story that I will never forget. She says that the rabbi in her synagogue, which was built by her donations from her father, this synagogue in the neighborhood, came to her mother. Her dad is dead, by the way, at that time, and told her that members of Hillel and the Israel Club on campus informed him that she is dating me and she's sleeping with me, and that she's pregnant with my twins. Okay. So I cracked up. This woman is crying, but I cracked up. And so she's like, why are you laughing, Laith? Why are you laughing? I was like, well, I'm glad that I wasn't black. They would have said you're pregnant with quadruplets or something. And apparently the rabbi was telling her mama that, Arabs are great lovers, and they take our women this way, and watch out, your woman's gonna, your daughter is gonna be a mother to Arabs, So I can never forget this. It's very funny, but it shows you how much within the Jewish community there's such programming against Arabic people. There's so much racism, and the poor youth in the Jewish community that have to go through all these indoctrination in these schools, the Jewish schools all around Canada and the US and the West, and then the synagogues that are preaching all this things that are opposite to what our great prophet Moses preached. And so there is a great responsibility on the Jewish anti-Zionists to challenge this Zionism within their community before it's too late for them. Because me and you, we can save everything we want to save from outside here, but we cannot enter into the Jewish community and have this battle. It is the responsibility of Jews that want to save their religion, that they want to save their community, to fight the Zionist control of their institutions. And otherwise I can't believe this, but yeah, they will be talking about Arab men forever.
All right, let's get back to Iraq, by the way. Before we move on to Syria, let's hit Iraq. I understand there's some fighting going on in Iraq, that these jihadis are up to no good again, and there's some scrapping going on. What's happening in Iraq? That's in the news.
Yes, so the Iraqi PMUs and military said that they engaged remnants of ISIS in the Diyala province, close to the border with Syria. It's actually very close to the Tanaf American base. So it seems like the US is activating some of these ISIS sleeper cells right on the border to put some more pressure on the Iraqi government and to threaten it, because Iraq is still asking the American military to leave. The American military is refusing to leave. Iraq still has its oil revenues being collected by the United States and has to get basically a permission every time they want to spend anything. So these are beginnings of threats to Iraq, and I think in the situation that the United States wants to go to war with Iran, it has to distract somehow the PMUs and the resistance inside Iraq with an internal battle, so they wouldn't be able to give any support to the Iranian government in such a case.
Let's talk about, let's put it all together: Syria, Turkey, Lebanon. Turkey, it's obvious that Lebanon is working, that Erdogan is working hard to get Syria in the way he wants it. Seems like he's having some very, very serious problems. I also saw that the U.S. is taking some money that it was giving to Egypt, and now it's moving it to Lebanon. Your thoughts on, let's start with Syria, and if you see any connections between Syria, Lebanon, Erdogan, all your thoughts on all of that stuff.
Oh yes. So in Syria today, there was the new Syrian Liberation Front that was announced last week. This is a new military formation that is now active on the ground, and it's anti-American, anti-Israeli, anti-Turkish occupation. They conducted an attack on a HTS office and the commander of the HTS in Latakia city. They liquidated the guy, they blew up the offices and took out the guards there. This is the fourth such attack in 4 days around the coastal area. So, right now, the HTS hierarchy is an easier target. It's not anymore buried underground in Idlib with Turkish troops protecting them and Turkish Air Force protecting them. Now they're spread out across the whole country, out in the open, in offices, in cars, walking around in the streets, and they are being targeted. So, while it may have looked like a total loss for resistance, what happened with the collapse of the Syrian legitimate government, right now we are starting to see the beginnings of hope arise in Syria. And if this continues and spreads around the country, the Americans and their tools in the region will be stuck in a quagmire and bleeding nonstop resources and fighters and equipment that they could have been using in different fronts. So, maybe the Russians will have the last laugh. We all understand that Russia made a deal. And although Russia doesn't trust the United States to keep any deal, the calculation clearly is that if the enemies of Russia are spread out in Syria and taking, hits left and right every day, that this is a better scenario than actually having Russia fight a war in Syria. And so this is what's happening in the coast. In the south of the country, the Suwaida region, that is mainly Druze, they have declared basically almost secession. They put up checkpoints across the entrances of the province. appointed a governor who's female, and are not allowing the HTS to come into Sueda, and they fought them off multiple times over the last 2 days. So actually, the HTS is unable to spread its control over Sueda. In Aleppo yesterday, there was, attacks also on HTS from the Kurdish Contras. They're fighting with HTS over the north of the city. So even the city of Aleppo is not fully under control and is disputed. Finally, I would say that there has been right now multiple clashes inside Damascus in Muslim mosques, Sunni mosques, because as I said maybe last time when we were together, the vast majority of Sunni Muslims in Syria are actually Sufi, meaning they're mystics. They don't belong to the orthodox schools of Sunni Islam. And the HTS is going mosque to mosque, lynching these Sufi preachers and kicking them out and appointing Wahhabi preachers in these mosques. Well, yesterday and the day before in 2 different mosques, these Wahhabi preachers were actually lynched by the convocation, the people that came to the mosque to pray, and thrown out. And new imams were installed by the populace of the region. So all of these are clear examples of how the HTS is going to have a worse time right now than it ever had, and that there is hope of a revolution somehow playing out in Syria. And the Americans in that condition where, when the Syrian government was there of President Assad, you can negotiate with a government like that, and you can have red lines and agree on terms of negotiations and or terms of engagement. But once it's total chaos and anybody can pick up a gun, an RPG, a missile thrower, a launcher, and throw it at an American base, it's impossible to control. And that is where we're going. And that's actually a good day for the resistance in the region.
I have said they will rue the day that they did this in Syria, because they will have somewhat of a failed state. And anyone who hates the U.S. or hates Israel will have an area where they can work, where they can develop. They will be attacked continuously at some point from Syria, and various groups will fight it out. What's interesting is HTS, they came in, they didn't have much of an army. They don't have much of an army. The people in the Syrian government were bribed, and the military were bribed to walk away. But HTS doesn't have the military. It doesn't have the the might to suppress uprisings, to suppress people who want to fight back. And if people just say we're not listening, they don't have anything to do with it. Let's talk about Erdogan. He seems to me that the situation he's in Syria is getting more and more slippery, in that he's got the Kurds, and nobody knows what's going on. The Kurds thought they had to deal with the U.S. Erdogan hates them. Then you've got the PKK. You've got various factions of the Kurds, and he wants to take over part of Syria, but he's got a Kurd mess. And I would also argue at this point, because he is clearly viewed as a person who's in an alliance with Netanyahu, his hope to lead the Muslim world, or whatever the heck it is, that's going to come back to bite him in the butt. And at home, it's not going to be good for him. Anyway, Erdogan.
Yes. Erdogan right now is starting to feel the heat. Obviously, he overstretched himself. And, as we see the situation inside Turkey is also destabilizing. There's all the Alawi population in Turkey that is starting to rebel. There's the Kurds that are getting more bold and emboldened with their actions. And there's all the nationalist Turks that are worried about the expenditures of this military and so forth. So things are not safe for Erdogan, and I think his playing on both sides between Russia and the United States, or Ukraine and Israel and so forth, is also not going to last. And because of his success in taking over Syria, this is also triggering the Saudis. You know, the Saudis hate Turkey. They view themselves as the appointed rulers of the Arabs, according to Master in the White House. And seeing Turkey revive its Ottoman glory and the United States allowing it to happen is threatening the Saud family. They are right now probably starting to pay off some people inside Syria to trigger attacks on HTS, and they will start to vie for territory inside Syria with the Turks. That's not going to go well, and clearly the Sauds are closer to the Zionists than Erdogan, although Erdogan tried to offer his services many times, but he still yaps pro-Palestinian positions. The Saudis don't do that. So they're clearly going to have a better alliance, the Saud family and the Zionists, than Erdogan with them. And with the coming of Trump, who's closer to Netanyahu and closer to the Saud family than Erdogan, I think Erdogan right now is worried about the changes that are going to happen inside the White House and the direction that things are going. And if a war is triggered with Iran by the Americans, there will be millions of Iranians inside Turkey. I mean, these are two bordering countries, and the situation on the border with Armenia and Azerbaijan is not going to be stable. And for sure, the Iranians, if they're attacked from American bases inside Turkey, they'll respond there. So the instability is just increasing. Although it looked like a huge win for Turkey, it opened Pandora's box, and Erdogan cannot calculate which way things are going to go.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Lastly, we got just a couple minutes left. So I did want to ask you about the Lebanon ceasefire, where the Israelis are saying we're going to stay. I was just reading this morning where the U.S. was basically saying, yes, we're negotiating with the Israelis to leave southern Lebanon, where Hezbollah is saying one way or the other, you're going to leave. If you don't leave, we're going to run you out. They are basically the so-called ceasefire that never really was a ceasefire for the Israelis. They continued to bomb, but it looks like, I don't know when the 60 days is up, but it looks like when that happens, that it's going to be, if the Israelis don't leave southern Lebanon, they're going to take some very, very hard hits. Your thoughts?
Oh, yes. Look, the ceasefire, I think, is going to end on January 27th or something like that. So it's going to be just a few days after the inauguration of Trump. It was timed for that, it seems like. We had today Hochstein, the former Israeli officer who serves as the American envoy to Lebanon, was here speaking and negotiating on the exit of the Israelis. He contradicted what the Israeli media was saying last week, that the Israelis are going to stay permanently in South Lebanon. He said, no, the Israelis are withdrawing and will be withdrawn before the end of the 60 days. We'll see if any of that is true. You never believe anything that comes out of an Israeli Zionist mouth. The other thing that people should note is tomorrow, Wednesday, the 9th, I believe. Wednesday the 8th. Thursday the 9th is the deadline for the Lebanese government to appoint a new president, to elect a new president, the parliament. So where the government is being pressured right now in all the political parties by the Americans, the French, and so on, to appoint somebody that is pro-American. We'll see how that plays out in the vote in the parliament. Clearly, if Hezbollah feels that the candidate that is going to be appointed is anti-resistance, they will refuse it. and that will drag us into chaos. Again, the West has an interest in appointing a president before the end of the ceasefire that is pro-American to continue in the pressure on the resistance. And I think the resistance is very awake and aware of what's going to happen, especially from the speeches of the new Secretary General of Hezbollah a few days ago, saying that they will refuse to appoint any the fascists like Jaja, Samir Jaja, that was head of the Phalange party, to presidency, and that they are ready to retaliate and push the Israelis out if they're not out of Lebanon by the end of the ceasefire.
Before we go, really quick, I'm going to show people. Amos Hochstein is the guy that Biden brought in to be the emissary or whatever to Israel. Let me show you a little something about, for people who don't know who this criminal guy is, right? Watch this. Two things that you need to know about Amos Hochstein. Here's an article on him. Amos Hochstein leaves Naftogaz Supervisory Board, right? Naftogaz, okay. Amos Hochstein confirming his resignation as an independent director on the board. Former diplomat, right, since 2017. So what you need to know about Amos Hochstein is he worked for the State Department for Barack Obama. After the United States overthrew the government of Ukraine, Amos Hochstein quit his job at the State Department, and he pulled what we'll call a Hunter Biden. He then went to Ukraine. Naftogaz is the official owned gas company of the Ukraine government. After the U.S. overthrew the government of Ukraine, he quits his job and he goes to work for the Naftogaz, goes to work for them, just like Hunter Biden. He gets a big salary for doing nothing. He's just another imperialist criminal, but it ain't over. What else do we need to know about this former IDF tank commander?
Oh, what we need to know is, I mean, you look at his hair, it's so oily.
Yeah.
He has so much oil that he's like spreading it on his hair. You know, obviously these are all gangsters, right?
Yeah, look at this. Biden taps Israel-born Amos Hochstein to oversee disputed Russian energy plan. As State Department envoy, official will oversee implementation of Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, which critics fear. So when Biden decided, hey, we got to stop the Nord Stream, he brought in Amos Hochstein. And apparently Amos Hochstein had a plan to stop the Nord Stream. And yes, apparently it was effective. So here's a guy who, like you said, the gangster. He's the gangster. He's the guerrilla. I knew a guy that was a mafia guy that was a guerrilla. His job was to go in when that's how he got started and beat people up, right? They bring Amos Hochstein in. What's this guy? He quits his job with the State Department. He goes over to Ukraine. He fills his filthy criminal pockets. When he's done with that, they're like, hey, we need a hitman to take care of Nord Stream. Who do we call? Well, of course, Amos Hochstein. Who else would you call if you need a knuckle dragger to take care of a filthy, rotten job? They bring in Amos Hochstein. They blow up Nord Stream. Now, what are we doing? A genocide. You know, only one name comes to mind when we need a guy to do a genocide. Amos Hochstein. Guy's a crooked criminal guy. And of course, everywhere there's filthy criminal activity involving the U.S., you will find Amos Hochstein.
Oh, yes. And one of the things that he did that maybe some of us have forgotten, I almost forgot that right now, was that he was responsible for negotiating the gas, treaty between Lebanon and Israel on the waters. So he definitely has a priority on terms of gas and oil revenues for the empire. And they dragged that deal and the demarcation until the Israelis practically sucked out most of the gas from the joint fields that are on that border. And now probably he's going to get a job about the gas and oil fields of Syria that are in the waters that have not been allowed to be touched for the last 30 years.
No question about it. He is the knuckle dragger. He's the guy they bring in. When they need something rotten done, you bring in Amos Hochstein. At any rate, thanks a lot. And don't forget, everybody, freepalestine.video is the website for the great work, journalistic work that's being done. It's in English. It is in out of run out of the Middle East. So you're going to get the latest information, the latest news, great videos. Go to freepalestine.video. Make sure you follow them on all of their social media platforms. Make sure that you donate. There is a donate button there, and you can do monthly donations, and that would be great. Freepalestine.video. We all got to get together and support them. We want journalism. We want independent journalism that is not controlled by the empire, and that's where you go. Laith Marouf, thanks a lot, my dear friend. We really appreciate you coming on the channel weekly. I know you're very, very busy. I know it's dangerous there, but we really appreciate you coming on and giving us the skinny on what's really happening there.
It's always a pleasure to be with you, Garland, and you can depend on me. I love your show, and I love your audience. See you next week.
All right. Thank you very much. Everyone, don't forget, share this on all your social media platforms. If you can afford to join, that's great. And don't forget, you can join the channel now. If you look, there's a join button where you can join and become a member of the channel. I think it's like $4-5 a month or something. If you can afford it, fine. If not, it doesn't matter. What's important is that you share this content on all your social media platforms, like and subscribe. We're out.